voulait faire de l'Afrique un marché unique du transport. Et il y a eu le lancement depuis 2015 du MITA, c'est-à-dire c'est le marché unique des transports aériens en Afrique. Et à ce jour, nous avons 35 pays qui ont pris l'engagement. Et donc vous savez, depuis 2000 jusqu'à 2015 à ce jour, ça fait quand même beaucoup d'années. Alors la journée d'aujourd'hui, c'était d'insister et d'inviter tous les autres pays d'Afrique qui restent pour qu'ils se joignent et qu'ils prennent l'engagement pour la mise en œuvre effective de la décision de Yamoussoukro. Et puis c'est CAFAC qui est l'organe d'exécution qui tire les pays. Nous, le Togo étant l'État champion, et c'est pour ça que le ministre des Transports du Togo que je suis, M. Acha, donc nous avons lancé aujourd'hui solennellement l'acte pour inviter les pays qui, jusqu'à présent, qui traînent un peu, de nous rejoindre. Parce que l'objectif, c'est de faire de l'Afrique. L'Afrique est un grand continent, c'est un grand marché. Et aujourd'hui, quand vous regardez sur les statistiques montrent qu'il n'y a que 10% des compagnies et que les habitants n'arrivent pas à se déplacer parce qu'il y a la cherté de la vie, il y a ainsi de suite. Donc, nous, aujourd'hui, dans le lancement de la décision de Yamoussoukro pour la mise en œuvre complète du MITA, c'est de l'intégration africaine, qu'on ait un espace unique en Afrique. Ceci va faire baisser les tarifs même pour les passagers, ça va augmenter la connectivité en Afrique. Merci.
Combien de pays ont déjà adhéré à ce projet? Combien de pays vous attendez? Et concrètement, qu'est-ce que l'Afrique devrait gagner de cela?
Comme je disais, 35 pays ont signé l'engagement. Et aujourd'hui, sur les 35, nous avons 15 pays qui sont prêts pour la mise en œuvre complète. Et donc, l'avantage, c'est, je l'ai évoqué, lorsqu'on aura le marché unique, à l'instar des Européens et des Latino-Américains, l'Afrique va étant un grand continent, un grand marché. Il y aura création d'emplois de plus de 40 000 créations d'emplois nouveaux. Et le marché, on a parlé de ZELCAF, la zone libre d'échange en Afrique. Et tout ça, là, les barrières vont tomber. Et qu'effectivement, l'Afrique sera plus forte et devant les grands des pays européens et des latino-américains. Merci beaucoup.
Le nom, s'il vous plaît.
Je suis Acha Dedi Afo, ministre des Transports aériens et ferroviaires du Togo. Merci beaucoup.
Our honorable ministers present, our DGs, heads of delegation, sister organizations, CEOs and leaders of industry, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, thank you all for coming. AFCAC is deeply honored by the presence of so many ministers at this event, which shows the commitment of the highest level of decision-making and policy-making in Africa to fast-track and accelerate the implementation of SATA. Allow me to start with a question. As many of you traveled great distances and had to cross many cities to get here within the same continent, the question I have is, what is the true size of Africa? If I can have the slides up, that would be helpful. Thank you. What is the true size of Africa? Many of us who flew here during the course of the past 2 days experienced it in real time. But I'd like to show you also what the true size of Africa is. It is a continent that can fit many others in its geographical landmass. So, here we are. We experience it when we travel, but the true size is 30 million square kilometers. And when you measure it, it can fit the United States of America, Mexico, China, and so many other countries into its landmass. This is an important and significant fact because it is the reason why aviation is so critical to Africa. And that is also why the priorities of both the Organization of African Union and the African Union single out the elements and industries and sectors that can connect and integrate Africa better. Through the SATAM, the Single African Air Transport Market, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the Free Movement Protocol for People and Goods. What is the outcome or the objective of all of these initiatives of the African Union? It is simply to accelerate Africa's economic and social development with a better integrated continent. So, to the next slide, let's talk about the journey of SATAM. As many of you have journeyed, so has SATAM. The next slide shows us how we started. Right from 1988 up until 1999, when we had the decision. And then in 2000, endorsed by heads of states, the highest level of decision-making for Africa. In 2002, it became binding on 44 countries in Africa. And AFCAC became the executing agency in 2007. From 2007 up until 2013, there was a lot of work done in the background. And in 2013, African heads of state again began the journey to accelerate Africa's air market liberalization, recognizing it as an enabler for economic development. And so the SATAM initiative was born, and it was finally endorsed in 2018 by African heads of state. The aim of SATAM is not just to implement the Yamoussoukro decision, which is the legal framework for market liberalization in Africa, but it is also to be a multilateral system, which means that individual states don't need to negotiate between themselves, but rather across themselves. That is also the purpose of the YD, which is to ensure that Africa can be connected not just within regions, but across regions. So, what are the benefits of this SATAM that we talk about? Many of us have seen this image in different forms over the years, but for those of us who may have not, it is simple. Liberalization of the air and air markets brings significant benefits, from supporting passengers like you and I as we fly to have better service, better connectivity, better access to air services, and better competition, leading to lower fares, leading to increased traffic growth, which generates trade, tourism, investment, productivity, and ultimately contribution to economies, creation of jobs, and general well-being for African citizens and the rest of the world. So, we take this in stages. Stage one, where are we today? Based on data and, from a study that was commissioned by the African Union, in 2019, total intra-African traffic was about 14.5 million passengers. Within the SATAM group of 35, the number was 7.6 million, thereabouts. And within the intra-SATAM YD compliant, meaning the ones who are already implementing YD to the full extent of Fifth Freedom, the traffic was less, about 4 million. These numbers are telling us a story. The The wider picture of traffic in Africa, 14 million. Amongst the 35, 7 point something million. But amongst the YD compliant, 3 million. What it means is that YD is not being fully implemented across Africa. And as mentioned by the champion state honorable minister, where we are today, sorry, can we go back one slide? Where we are today is 14.5%. One more slide, back one more. One more. Okay, so let's go forward. I don't see the slide. Where we are today is 14.5%. Where we want to be is 30% by 2025. We may think that that is a big leap. It may be ambitious, but what does it actually mean? It simply means increasing the number of fifth freedom routes between these 15 countries that form the Saturn PIP. That's what it means. And that is why we're so excited by the commitment shown by these honorable ministers and leaders of aviation to fast-track the implementation of Saturn. Next slide, please. According to data that we received from AFRA, our partner, thank you very much, we have a sample of airlines that operate fifth freedom rights. From South African Airways to Air Senegal, of course, Ethiopian, Air Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya Airways, Rwanda, Air Peace, Group Transair, Royal Air Maroc. It's a sample. There are quite a number of airlines that operate fifth freedom. But we're taking a sample just as Saturn PIP is a sample, it's a pilot project. Based again on the data that we received from AFRA, which does not cover all airlines and all airline operations, and by which we ask and encourage our states and airlines and partners to share data with us so that we can do a full simulation for the entire continent. We have a list again of the freedom rights and how it is divided across the continent. And we can see it for ourselves. Again, this is just to show you the states out of the 35 states that are implementing Saturn. And the bars in red are our 15 Saturn PIP states. And we can see that they have significant activity on fifth freedom routes. The next slide shows us some of the airports that actually receive the most fifth freedom routes, with Douala standing very high on that point. And the reason is probably because of the nature of the regions of Africa. Next slide, please. Africa is not a country, as we all know. It is a continent of 55 countries. So again, we've taken one sample of an airline from Cote d'Ivoire, Air Cote d'Ivoire, showing some of its fifth freedom routes. It's just a sample. We will do a bigger study and a bigger exercise that covers the entire continent. We're just starting out. Now, the nature of the regions. This is a very important slide. Again, this is taken from the study commissioned by the African Union. The scheduled capacity, the capacity by freedoms. What do freedoms of the air mean? It means the ability for people to go easily between cities. So we can see that in South Africa, East Africa, and North Africa, our point-to-point traffic from city A to city B is very high. This is the blue bar. Going from city A to city B, very high. Now, Central and West Africa, it is less. The yellow bar is slightly more. What does this bar tell us? Central Africa, by nature, is made up of many landlocked countries and many states that don't have airlines.